bottom line up front, we had a massive, massive victory in Multnomah County, Oregon, Portland City, Antifa City. Joey Gibson has been freed of all charges, cleared of all charges. He had been prosecuted with no evidence for 3 years. For 3 years, they had pursued him with bogus riot charges. And the reality is he was doing nothing but exercising his First Amendment rights. I believe they knew that. We finally got the charges dismissed. Next stop, we're going back to federal court, and we are going to sue the city of Portland and the Multnomah County for what they did over these last 3 years.
To run. De Leon chases him, punching him in the face, sending him to the ground.
There he goes again.
News overnight where police in Portland, Oregon declared a riot after protesters broke into police union headquarters and started a fire. Police tried to clear the area, shutting down several streets around the union headquarters.
Search for this suspect wanted for a protest beatdown. Police say he is the attacker seen in this viral video, knocking out a man with a kick to his head.
Disturbing video shows Antifa members carrying out an assault on a group of Christians, including children, who were gathering in Portland, Oregon this past weekend for a prayer event. The Christians can be heard praying as the Antifa members became more aggressive and violent.
Former Clatsop County prosecutor Josh Markey believes it would be unfair to give demonstrators who violate the law a free pass.
It is incomprehensible to me that you could have downtown Portland destroyed the way it has, tens of millions of dollars of damage, and say, well, there's no accountability for that.
The radical left district attorney in Portland, Mike Schmidt, his name is, has released hundreds of rioters and announced that anyone arrested for interfering with police officers, disorderly conduct, criminal trespass, rioting, and other offenses will not be prosecuted under any circumstance.
This is an absolute disgrace because the mayor of Portland has been letting the Antifa thugs take over their downtown for months and months and months now. The police do not do anything. Businesses are having to shut their gates whenever these guys come through for fear of what's going to happen to them. This shows the face of the radical progressive left. They will do this to anybody who they think is not woke enough.
Wheeler meeting with protesters downtown Wednesday night.
Well, I want to thank the tens of thousands of Portlanders who've come out to demonstrate in support of racial justice and equity.
Wheeler got an up-close look at the Fed's actions. After spending well over an hour speaking with demonstrators, the mayor stood along the fence that surrounded the federal courthouse. Fireworks were shot at the building, and federal police responded by deploying tear gas.
Ted Wheeler didn't want somebody coming into town and saying Antifa was bad, dangerous, and hateful. And because Mr. Gibson said that, they brought all the power of the state to bear against him. And, you know, it's really, really shocking because Mr. Gibson actually cares about the people of Portland more than Ted Wheeler. He wanted Portland to be a safe place where people could walk the streets, not what it is today.
And Joey's been actually like trying to save the city. I remember having conversations with him, like listening to him talk about how in the Save the City, I'm just looking at him like, yeah, and you're going to serve ice cream in hell too, aren't you, Joey? But like he really has a big heart about this.
Joey Gibson, right there! Go to hell, you massive scum! Go to hell, massive scum! Kick his ass! How many of you love America? We are going to keep America great. Every time we have a rally as conservatives, as Christians, as people who love this country, they show up to want to try to harm us.
I'm 100% American. The Constitution protects me as a citizen of this country, and I love America to the fullest and with a passion.
We got to push as hard as we can to make 2018 one of the biggest revolutions in this country. Bigger than 2016. Bigger than 1776.
that you breathe your life into the West Coast, you breathe your life into Portland, and then we fight through these lies, this darkness, this deception that has grabbed on. Please help people of Portland understand that we're not there to fight Portland. We're not there out of hatred. We're not there out of anger. I mean, God, we want to give it back to the good people of Portland, the good citizens, liberal, conservative, it doesn't matter who they are. Everyone that's here came specifically to ask you to come into Portland, to come into the West Coast. Jesus, we're here for you. We ask you to hear, have faith in you. We just ask that you help touch us and you continue to move us forward. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
There's tons of people with different beliefs and ideas. I think that eventually we got to come together, but we can't do it if Antifa's in the middle constantly causing violence. Get those guys out of the way, and then we'll be able to come together and just be able to learn and grow from one another. We don't have all the answers, but they don't either.
What is it that you guys are trying to convey, your message? Because I feel like a lot of people on the counter-protester side would say, hey, these guys are racist, these guys don't accept people for who they are.
I would say, why is it that we have way more color than they have? I'm darker than 90% of those people over there call me racist. It's not about race, it's about what's on the inside. We're here to promote freedom and God, and that is it. And we actually have that American spirit where we're going to stand up for what we believe in, unapologetically, unafraid. Our country's getting soft. It's getting soft, and we need leaders to step up.
Instead, I'd like to read from Corinthians. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. The truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things.
Look at these guys. Look at them. All they can say is F this, F that. That's hate, man.
Let's go, guys.
I'm asking Portland to turn to God, man. Turn to God. You don't need this hate.
What's your message today? What is the message that you want to share with people of Portland or people of Vancouver?
Well, the number one message is to put pressure on Ted Wheeler to do his job. We have people on the left and right, both sides of the streets, that have major problems with Ted Wheeler. I think we need to address that first. But I also want to inspire people to come out in places like Portland. Even if the city hates you, they think they hate you, they despise you, it's okay to come out and show who you are.
New tonight, Patriot Prayer leader Joey Gibson says he will turn himself in to authorities. Gibson's lawyer says he's facing a felony charge of rioting.
Well, first, I do want to say that a Portland police detective did confirm to me there is an active arrest warrant out for Gibson. When Gibson and I spoke earlier, he says this is a huge attack on the First Amendment, and he also says he never got physical with anyone. Gibson is accusing the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office of filing a politically motivated felony charge against him. But Gibson's lawyer, who's also the Multnomah County GOP chair, tells Fox 12 by Oregon law, a felony riot charge requires proof of tumultuous and violent conduct. He says, although there are multiple videos of the events outside Cider Riot, not one of them shows Gibson engaging in violent conduct.
I had a chance earlier today to speak with Gibson over the phone, and he tells me that this move is, quote, purely political, that this is about essentially banning him from the streets of Portland.
Yesterday, Joey Gibson, the founder and leader of the Clark County-based right-wing group Patriot Prayer, told us he was facing riot charges and planned to turn himself in today. And he did.
This all stems from the May Day protest that we saw happen in Portland. Before his arrest, Gibson held a news conference.
Gibson stood right here when he addressed the media, and he had several messages for us, but the main one that he wanted to get across was that he says he's never been violent at any of the protests that he's attended, including the one that this charge stems from. And here's another part of his message. Take a listen.
We're not going to stand down to Mayor Wheeler, okay? We're not going to stand down to the corrupt charges that they're bringing on us. They refuse to charge Antifa.
As of right now, Gibson has not posted bail and remains in custody.
They put a tremendous amount of effort into this prosecution for 3 years, bringing in the federal authorities as well, with no evidence, simply because Joey Gibson had the courage in 2019 to stand up. He stood up for the whole world. He went on his live stream. He went to an Antifa hangout, and he told the world and the city of Portland a message they needed to hear. He told them Antifa was violent and hateful. And if you watch his live stream from 2019, he stands in front of them peacefully and warns the city of Portland. He says, if you care about the city of Portland, you'll do something about these people. They're violent and hateful. And Antifa responded to being called violent and hateful by proving Mr. Gibson was right. They pepper sprayed him, they spit on him, they kicked him, they slapped at him. One of them even slashed at him with some kind of a metal weapon of some sort. I mean, just unbelievable
And I'm guessing
behavior.
that the prosecutors didn't spend a quarter of the time going after those violent criminals as they did Joey.
Patriot Prayer is vowing to fight a felony riot charge against him.
If they want to continue to push these charges on me, I'll take it to the very end. I'm not going to plead guilty to one thing, not one thing, because I didn't break the law.
He said he would not take a plea deal and promised to go to trial.
In Oregon, riot is a Class C felony. And if the defendants are convicted, they could face up to 5 years in prison and up to a $125,000 fine.
Statements in a high-profile trial started today in Multnomah County Court. It comes nearly 3 years after members of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer were charged with rioting stemming from a Portland protest.
Multnomah County prosecutors say they built their case against Gibson and the others based on the video evidence from that day. But defense attorneys also cited the video as evidence that Gibson was instead trying to keep the peace during the confrontation and was being provoked and attacked himself.
Now, despite being spat upon, kicked, slapped, slashed at with a knife, Mr. Gibson did not respond with any violent act. He did not pepper spray anyone, he did not punch anyone, he did not kick anyone. And what you'll see when you listen to everything is that Mr. Gibson repeatedly told people, don't throw things. Put your weapon away.
What there is there's violence from Antifa. And that brings me back to the First Amendment point. We have a fundamental political question going on in Oregon, right, in Portland, right here, right now, which is, what is, should this group that has been allowed to run wild and damage property and break things repeatedly over and over again, should something be done about this group? He comes up and this person begins to shoulder into him and he pushes the person back. The person is not threatened by him in any way, shape, or form. The person knows that she can go up and do this and get in his face and hit him and knows that he will not retaliate. There is no element of threat there or ominous conduct.
Just his arm while holding his phone. He did a thing that could plainly be read as offensive, but I do not think any reasonable juror could read it as being violent, because no reasonable juror could find that that act, which is the closest act we have, was violent and tumultuous. No reasonable juror could find that the state had proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Gibson had committed each and every element of the crime of riot. Mr. Gibson's motion for judgment of acquittal is granted. I do not find this to be a close question. I am somewhat bewildered that the state has driven this case to this point, despite having all of the evidence in this case, all of the video in its possession for years. The district attorney's office's decision to push this case to trial is surprising, given the state of the evidence. Defendant Schultz's motion for judgment of acquittal is granted.
Latest in a trial that we've been following, a riot charge against Patriot Prayer founder Joey Gibson dropped in court today, just hours ago. This judge even saying he was bewildered why the prosecutor brought this case against Gibson. Let's get to our Lisa Balick live tonight with details and what might be happening next in all this. Lisa?
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. The judge really came out swinging with a lot of comments about really why was this even before him as a riot charge.
I am somewhat bewildered that the state has driven this case to this point.
Frank words from the judge who acquitted Joey Gibson and Russell Schultz, both charged with rioting. Multnomah County Circuit Court Judge Benjamin Swade saying no reasonable jury could find their behavior outside the Cider Riot Bar in 2019, quote, threatened an immediate breach of the peace. Video evidence showed Gibson and Schultz not engaged in the fighting. Instead, Gibson seen and heard on video taunting anti-fascists. But the judge said Gibson's behavior was provocative, but not rioting. After court today, Gibson, who could have been sentenced to prison if found guilty, told KOIN6 he was thankful for the judge's decision.
It's an obvious case of discriminatory prosecution. The judge was visibly annoyed that Mike Schmidt chased these charges for 3 years for simply acts of free speech. I think it's amazing that they've allowed Portland to burn down for several years. For 200 days straight, the city's burned down and dropped all riot charges, but the DA pursued us specifically. So we're looking forward to a lawsuit.
It is a smackdown, a public smackdown of the district attorney, Mike Schmidt. And we asked Lewis and Clark law professor Tung Yin about Gibson's threat of a lawsuit. He says the DA put in a policy that single riot charges would not be pursued in light of the 2020 protests.
And that was actually meant to give room for prosecutors to focus on people with other violent crimes and property crimes beyond the riot charge. And this is the rule Gibson is likely referring to.
If the main reason is that the DA's office is sympathetic to the 2020 protesters and not sympathetic to Joey Gibson because of his message, then that raises the appearance of not being even-handed by the DA's office.
Now, you don't have to give away all your legal strategy or what to expect here, but I mean, in the process of discovery and what your federal case is going to be, I mean, are you going to get access to emails, or how do you plan on proving all of the political persecution against Joey?
Oh, there's going to be an extensive discovery process. That is absolutely for sure. But you have to understand, we've been fighting this battle for 3 years now. It was originally filed in state court. We went up to federal court. Then back to state court. Now it's been finally dismissed in state court, and we will be going back to federal court. Now, the reason the federal court issue is interesting is we originally sued the Multnomah County in federal court to stop the prosecution, saying it was a selective prosecution with no evidence. And Multnomah County got out of that lawsuit. They got out of it by presenting misinformation to the court. They told the court, oh, no, there's other evidence that you're going to see. There's other evidence of violent conduct beyond these videos. Well, that turned out to be, as we always knew, completely not true. And so now we're going to go back to federal court, hopefully in front of that same federal judge. And they're going to have some explaining to do on the government side as to why they misrepresented the record to get out of federal court and why they pursued this prosecution of Russell Schultz and Joey Gibson with no evidence for 3 years. I mean, imagine feeling the entire weight of the state government, the city government, even bringing U.S. Marshals in on somebody who simply stood at a protest. That's most men would break from that pressure. Most men would take some kind of a deal. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to say kudos to Joey Gibson and Russell Schultz for having the courage to stand for what is right and having the courage to endure for 3 years that trial and that ordeal and not fold and have the faith in their legal team. It was a strong team, and have the faith to go through that process and never surrender. Good for them. America needs more people like that.
I can't agree more. And I got to tell you, as somebody that sadly one of many that doesn't have to imagine that, Joey Gibson is an inspiration that there is hope in the justice system. And I do want to believe that. Joey Gibson was an innocent man. And despite 3 years of political persecution, the charges have rightfully been dropped. Thanks to Angus Lee, the attorney here, on with us today.